I would say, as like a one-liner, it's our job to be the conduit between data and just everyone else. It's our job to go in there and, me and you can have a different conversation than I can have with my director of guest service and I can have with a homeowner.
Mm-hmm.
It's our job to be able to take the data, take what we're doing, on top of doing revenue management, and then be able to articulate that to any audience, and then have those kind of conversations with any person and tailor the conversation to those people.
Welcome to RevLabs by PriceLabs.
Hey everybody, welcome back to Life of a Revenue Manager by PriceLabs. This is another one of our series with RevLabs, our podcast, and I am super excited today to be joined by my friend John Graham with Summit Mountain Rentals out in Colorado. I'm your host today. I'm Kyle Driskell. I'm a senior solutions consultant with PriceLabs. Basically, I work with our large customers, help them figure out the tool, look into revenue management with them and all that. But today I am your host and we're going to hit the ground running. So had a little conversation with you earlier, John. If you don't mind, let's talk about Denali. You've went through a nice big ski season. You're getting ready to have a nice break. And yeah, as a revenue manager, what are some of the issues you're facing getting ready to take a nice little break?
Yeah, no, Kyle, thanks for having me on. Always love talking with you. So again, thank you for the invitation. I look forward to our conversation. But yeah, as you pointed out, I work for Summit Mountain Rentals in Breckenridge, Colorado. We do a yearly closure coming up on May. Just operationally, most of the company shuts down, kind of goes into snail pace. And usually we have about a 2-week window to take a break. I am choosing to combine that 2 weeks along with a lot of my coworkers do the same with another 2 weeks on the end. Well, I may look at an email, but realistically, I'll be pretty unreachable. I'm driving to Denali round trip. So from the state of Colorado up to Denali, little over 8,000 miles total round trip, 16 plus days of just literal driving. And yeah, it's a mad dash to the finish line for me as we wrap up winter pricing. We're releasing winter pricing and finalizing it for this 2025-2026 ski season. I also am responsible for onboarding, so I'm onboarding a couple different units in our new Florida 30A market, as well as a couple here in Breckenridge. And I think it's when you send an email out to everyone reminding them, you keep mentioning every morning in our daily stand-up meetings that, hey, don't forget, you've got 2 weeks, 8 or 9 business days left until I am out. You realize how much is on your plate, and I think everyone else realizes like, oh man, I better get an answer sooner than later because I won't hear from this guy till June, and then I'm catching up on a month of emails at that point. So I definitely feel the pressure, the mad dash to the finish line. Luckily, I am supported in my role by a director of revenue and marketing. So I am the manager of revenue and marketing. So he's, got my back in some of these markets, but there are other things that just live in a silo with me that until I'm asked the question, I'm like, oh man, I'm the only one who knows that and can answer that question. So hopefully nothing breaks. That's kind of what I'm reaffirming now. Like, here's a quick SOP. If this breaks, just unplug it and plug it back in. I don't know. It's things like that.
Yeah.
Definitely, in that, and seeing it in this light, it's just a lot to take in. A bit of background to that. So again, I work for Summit Mountain Rentals here in Breckenridge, Colorado. We manage about 365 properties here in the Summit County area, so Breckenridge, Keystone, Dillon, Frisco, Silverthorne area. We are also expanding into the 30A market under our other brand, Bon Home. So we have properties in Rosemary Beach, in Santa Rosa. We have a new property in Seaview that I actually just finished before this meeting, and I'm responsible for all the revenue up there, or revenue down there, revenue management there, as well as supporting our director of revenue management here. So pretty big operation between just 2 guys. We're not allowed to be on the same plane together or in the same car. And we're definitely not allowed to take vacations at the same time because it just wouldn't work. So
Completely understand that. And it's so cool to talk to you right now, because when we first started communicating at the conferences and things like that, 30A was just kind of just getting the ball rolling. What do you see as like a big issue for a revenue manager when they're entering a new market like what you're experiencing right now? And then to kind of follow up with that as well, what's something that you've really found comforting in moving into a new market. Like, and the reason I ask that is because I've been in that position where, hey, all of a sudden here's 200 new units. You're going into a new market. You've got to learn something completely new. What have you found that's worked for you hopping into a new market, and then what have you found that it's kind of a hindrance for you as well?
Yeah, definitely a great question. It's something that, like you said, when we first started talking, it's pretty nerve-wracking for me. I've been fortunate enough, I've been in Summit County now for almost a decade. I think I'm actually just starting my 10th year, if I'm doing my math correctly. And I've been on the operations side, and now I've been in revenue and marketing for almost 3 years now. So I have a lot of historical knowledge of this area. My boss, Gavin Douglas, has been doing this for roughly the same timeline, being the director of marketing revenue here. So we have a lot of historical knowledge that we don't realize how fortunate we're having to utilize that we can kind of, we can add bits and bobs to it from just, whether it's our scrape data, whether it's utilizing key data or those, our own market data, and just what our portfolio is doing, not to mention a portfolio of 365 units, all ranging from one bedroom or studios in the middle of nowhere cabins to ultra luxury mansions up on Peak 8 that are ski and scout and everything in between that same stroke. So I don't need to rely so much on the data to help me make all of my decisions because it's historical. We know Breckenridge has seasons. We know that this is when we do good, this is when we do bad. And stuff changes, marketing conditions change, consumer habits change. I think right now everyone's saying the booking window shrinking. We're seeing it kind of more do this rather than shrinking.
Same
and
here.
we've been adjusting to that, and we've seen that over the past couple of years. But then take all of that and be like, here's a brand new market where you don't have that historical knowledge. You don't have a 365 units to A, B, and test. You just have a handful of units and really starting from scratch. We were fortunate enough to start with a unit in Rosemary Beach, which I think is the equivalent of their Breckenridge or Vale. It's their big heavy hitter in that strip relative to Santa Rosa or Seagrove, excuse me. Yeah, Seagrove. I had to look at my screen to remember there's so many C's something. It was just diving in the deep end and being like, here, go research it. I'm fortunate enough to work with Jennifer Talbert from Key Data. She's helped me a lot through this journey of mine and really utilizing Key Data to better understand their markets, understanding that, Breckenridge has one big season. We have winter. We have December to January, then nothing really till June, July, and then a bit of a pickup, good pickup for July and August. But the ADR is, we tell our homeowners you make 70 to 80% of your revenue between December and April. The other 20, 30 kind of sprinkled in between there. So to come into 30A and learn about all of their different shoulders, where one shoulder is different than another shoulder, and their slow season is actually our peak season. It's been a lot to digest. And then not to mention, again, the differences of Rosemary Beach versus Santa Rosa, even being as close as Inlet Beach and seeing how that functions differently. We have a home in the back of Inlet Beach. It's a 4-bedroom, and it's actually, how much of a difference a 10-minute drive, I've done the drive, does in revenue for a home that's a 4-bedroom, but it's doing the same revenue that a 2-bedroom in downtown Rosemary does because it's just not there. So learning all of these learning all the nuances of these, and then finding similarities and differences in what I experience here in Summit County, from Breckenridge to Frisco. Those are the two big areas here. We have the new developments here in Silverthorne, downtown area, that's blossoming left and right with brand new complexes every other year. There's some other new development going in there. So seeing those similarities and differences are really great. But I think to the last half of your question, the biggest challenges I face in the 30A market right now is just trying to separate what I do in Breckenridge and how I function there, and then understanding there are similarities, but there's a lot of differences, and then just being confident in my choices for sure, because I just don't have the same kind of data I do. I'm scraping twice as much data for that market relative to what I do in Breckenridge for that, because I don't need to scrape it. I have my own data. Down there, I don't. So again, fortunate enough to be able to talk with great people like you, Jennifer Talbert, my own boss, Gavin Douglas, and just within my company and get reassurances. We do have some boots on the ground there that have a lot of experience and historical knowledge of the place. So that's also really awesome to know that, hey, this is how the summer goes, but late August gets really hot and kind of tails off when kids go back to school. But then you see a bump up in September and October because now it's fall and it's the weekenders, and how Atlanta plays into that market, how even
Yep.
Southern Florida comes up there, how Texas plays in. So seeing all of these different moving parts are really awesome for me. This keeps me, excited and learning about the new areas. And, my BD person down there, hey, we got a unit in this town. I'm like looking at the map. I'm like, where is this? Okay, here's third. Okay, this is over here. And then trying to really understand those differences is just great and exciting and really, a breath of fresh air and being
Yeah.
able to apply my skill set and what I know from Breckenridge, but then being like, go here, all of that historical stuff is gone. Those things are gone. Go figure it out.
Yep.
So
Yeah, and like living in the main market that you work in, like you're completely submerged in it. You know all the nuances. You know when the new event's happening. You can physically see if demand is really there or not. And then what do you feel now that you're pricing something that is a distance away from you? We've already kind of hit on some of the little nuances and how much more data you're having to find and rely on other people. But from an actual like feeling standpoint with you, what are you feeling about Florida? And like, is there fear in not knowing these things, and how do you kind of overcome that? And it may be as simple as just relying on, the comrades that you've got down there as well.
yeah, I think like you said, I've known you for almost 2 years now. I met you first 2 years ago in Nashville. And even talking about it then, it's scary, it's nerve-wracking, how am I going to do it? And now I'm doing it. We started off with one unit. We didn't go in there and buy another company. We started off with one unit, which actually was owned by an owner in Breckenridge who happened to own in that area also. Fortunate enough to be in the Villages of Rosemary Beach, which is a very big area in there and a very, well-known place. So it's not like I'm starting in the middle of nowhere down there and not having
Yeah.
a lot of similarities. But now we have 10 units. I just onboarded our newest 3. And I just feel, like I said, really excited about it, but also every move I make in Breckenridge, I know I move in 5% and 10% increments. And I know when I do it, I always have a schedule for it. Me and my boss are always like, oh, hey, don't forget, oh, here's a note from last year where we did this. That's out the window. Down there, I'm moving by 2% points every other day. I'm watching key data way more closely than I do. And I'm not functioning on that macro level. I'm on the micro individual level. And that's not something I have the luxury to do in Breckenridge because of the scale of our operation.
Yeah.
But it's so nice to really get to know these properties and really take the time now. And I'm going to call it an investment in my own education for the area so that I can understand those differences and really just sit there every day. Like I have all of my key data tabs I look at every day. For Breckenridge, unless it's New Year's or Christmas or those big windows, I'm not looking at key data every day. I'm just watching my own metrics, my own booking velocity, what's going on there. So it's a totally different, experience for me. I've been fortunate enough to been to the area.
Yep.
So I've walked around, I know the layout. I hear, hey, we signed a unit in Barrett Square. Great. I know where that is. I ate dinner, actually below the unit that I saw. I'm like, oh, hey, I've walked under that building before. So that's great. But it's really exciting to get to apply what I know and what I do in a completely different way. It's also terrifying at the same time.
Yep.
You sell something out fully, and you're like, did I undersell that? And then it's back to the knowledge of that, yeah, we know the first year there, I may not be hitting the maximum ADR, the maximum rev potential of a property, but it's also a learning experience, and it's also just getting a new unit going. So I feel a lot better in that rather than inheriting listings that have always been making 100K a year. And we know now the owners that bought in 2021, 2022 of anywhere, we aren't seeing those numbers. We're going back to the post-COVID, pre-COVID levels, excuse me. So I don't have to have those conversations. So that's nice.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's a combination of excitement and just a little bit of, of just sheer terror and fear to an extent.
Yeah.
But just it's really nice to be able to have that micro level connection with my properties and focus on them instead of grouping them in as 2-bedroom condos, 1-bedroom condos, operate on that macro level. Not to say that we don't get down to that level,
Yeah.
but for the most part, it's functioning on the higher ends, 5% on this, 5% here, 10% here. And here it's, 2% on this unit, but this unit's doing really good. Oh, here's a window that I can actually look at, a 10-day window I have open because of a cancellation. Let me go to key data. Let me see what that window's doing. Let me spend 30 minutes pricing a 10-day window.
Yep.
Whereas I could never do that in the Breckenridge market. That is not going to happen.
Yeah. So you hit on something that I think super, super important, mainly for remote revenue managers. And I'm always gonna try to do my best to help a revenue manager out on this podcast. So I experienced something very similar to you prior to joining PriceLabs when I was a revenue manager. I live in Knoxville. I was pricing properties out in Breckenridge, and you can do so much with data. But I found that when I actually got to go into the market and see it and understand it and feel it, that made it so much easier for me and made me a better revenue manager as well. Do you kind of feel the same thing? Like now that you've been there, is there a little bit of extra like, man, I got the lay of the land now. I understand like if these people want to go eat at a fancy restaurant, it's over here. How much how does that help you with your job? And the reason I'm asking is because I know a lot of remote revenue managers that don't ever get to visit their market and their bosses need to send them to market. So kudos to Mr. Gavin for getting you out there and down to Florida.
Yeah, I think you hit the proverbial nail on its head there. It's, again, I've been fortunate. I've been in market for 10 years in Breckenridge. I sought to stay here as a revenue manager to grow because my historical knowledge is so applicable. Even though that was more operations, I still saw the patterns. I have a vested interest.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that just going there, it makes it real. That can be good and bad because then you have emotions involved instead of just, data. But I think our job is a combination of that. It's not just data.
Absolutely.
I've seen plenty of times where if I had just listened to key data, that's not to bash key data. I get it. Here's the data. It's
Mm-hmm.
our job to interpret it. And we're not computers. Otherwise, I'd have AI would replace all of our jobs. We have to bring that emotional sentiment and be like, no, I'm going to hold out for this number because I don't care what the data says. I know I can get this. I'm just going to do it. Emotion plays a huge part in our job. And I think it's really important to get that exposure to your market. And even if it's only for a day, I mean, we met in Destin. We currently don't manage in Destin. And I drove the 30A strip, but I spent actually the week at our first unit in the village of downtown Rosemary. And being able just to walk around. The first night we were there, me and Gavin went out to dinner down in Barrett Square. And, most everything was closed because it was the first week of December, but it made it real. It made me understand what it was like to be in market. We walked through some back streets and saw these houses and all the for sale signs. And we're like, guessing how much do you think that one costs? How much do you think it'll make? And then go to key data the night, being nerds and just pulling it up and being like, oh, hey, that's that house. What did it do last year? Oh, here's, Wheelhouse's tool. I forget the name when we yelled at by Wheelhouse for that. Wheelhouse's BI tool that tells me what this property did, that finds my listing links, and did all of these cool things. It just makes it real and it makes it a bit personal. And I think too often our job is detached from that. And I get why it has to be in some instances. If you have 10 units in a market and it's just not a cost-effective thing for you, I get it. But as a company that's looking to grow and expand your market, and this is going to be our second home, for lack of a better term, I think it's really important to go there, get boots on the ground, spend your time, stay in one of your units you can, or stay in your competitive units. When our GM and our director of guest services, they came down as well. They actually stayed in Seacrest, right behind the villages, and they stayed in the competitors unit to see the experience. I won't name the competitor. They stayed in one of theirs to see how it was and where their deficiencies are our strengths and where our deficiencies are their strengths. So I think it's really important to go there. I would encourage everyone to visit your market, even if it's just for a day or two. It just makes it real. It's like, oh, hey, I know that. I manage that. I walk past Park Place in downtown Breck. Oh, hey, we have units there. It makes it that much more real. And then it also, when you go to, in my case, I do onboarding. So I'm writing the descriptions for these units. I'm, pricing them based off of the same proximity. I know that a downtown Park Place unit, and for those of you not familiar, Park Place is like less than 5 minutes from downtown. You can ski down to it at the end of the day. Great, awesome location in modest accommodations. They're not really high end. It's just a great place. It is actually our bread and butter. We have 15 units there and they crush it. And anytime I deal with one, it's really easy for me to price because I know how close it is that I see the value in it. If you're outside looking in and you listen to, what key data says your base price should be, or Wheelhouse or any of these companies, they don't have those factors. We actually saw an error with our pricing where we do all of our own custom pricing in Wheelhouse. We set our base rates and then we play off of that.
Yep.
It's switched down to its recommended, which again, I'm not bashing Wheelhouse. It's just, I get it. They don't understand that. And this is for Verb Mountain Lodge in downtown Breck.
Yep.
And we lost like 20 or 30% on each booking we took because it went to this level instead of at our level, because we were able to assign it value knowing that, no, this is downtown. I don't care that it was built in the 70s, that some of them have the green carpet in them still. It doesn't matter. This is downtown Breck. Ski in, not ski out technically, right to the gondola. We know what it's worth. And if you're an outside revenue manager looking in and you don't understand that, sure, you can still make some really good money, but you're leaving a lot on the table. So I think it's really important to go to these markets, give you that understanding, and then feel better about the decisions you're making. I'm telling you, the go back to the July gap, I have a 10-day, I had a cancellation. It used to be like 3 nights over here, 3 nights here, just trying to fill those nights with like a 6-night stay in the middle. So 12 nights. Now I have all 12 nights open. I know compression is kicking in heavy down there. I'm willing to play the waiting game because this condo is amazing. I've stayed there, high-end finishes. It's much nicer than some of the other ones. So yeah, I'm going to play the waiting game. I'm going to push my ADR up. So I actually moved the pricing up for that week because instead of having 2 3-day gaps, I have a 10-day window. Yeah, I'm going to push ADR. I'm going to feel confident in my decision, regardless of what my data says, because I've been there, because I understand those net worth. And yeah, I'll feel better in 2 weeks, even if it doesn't book. I'm like, no, I'm still going to wait. It's core July. It's a beautiful unit. It will book. And I'm not going to push on pricing because of that, because I've been there.
Yeah, exactly. And that's that historical data. Like if we look at it broadly, talking about key data, and I think anybody that's listened to this podcast knows that I'm a big fan of key data. We've shouted them out a few times positively, and one little negative one in there too, but no biggie. When you look at the broad data, it just historically it doesn't make as much sense. But I'm right there with you. The feel is something that is very important, and I think in terms of the vacation rental space, there are so many people that want to be specific and perfect. And if we're looking at C-level folks that have to meet their budgets, we've got to hit all of those things and it needs to be right on cue. I think a revenue manager's role is to use those feelings and go in and identify something that can really move the needle. Speaking of moving the needle, and this is one of the ones that one of the questions I really wanted to get to. So you are all over the place in terms of how things are different. So January 30th, you've got 300 properties. We're focused on ski. We're focused on high dollar ADRs. We're focused on maybe some group bookings, those kind of things. And then you flip the script and you go down to Florida and you're dealing with the snowbirds and the people that want lesser rates, trying to get longer stays and things like that. How did you find, how was your January this year and your February going through those such vastly different sessions or vastly different seasons and markets?
Yeah, no, you're correct. It's the first time, we signed our first unit, I think, down there in the 30A market in November. We had 1 unit until, I think, mostly through January. Then we had 2 or 3 coming on. So you're actually adding units during this time also. So it's, again, I'm very fortunate that Breckenridge has a lot of similarities, and that's one where I know how to price those seasons. I know how to attract these snowbirds, like you were saying, these longer length of stay in the shoulder seasons. But I'm also very fortunate to be supported by a really great team, giving me confidence. And listen, the goal at that point is just to get a booking, to get the listing going. So it wasn't really that hands-on. The parts where I was hands-on was researching the March and the June, July. And I'm doing that. Then, well, like you said, also pricing historical stuff in my area, watching compression happen, worrying about, kind of that middle booking window disappearing. So we're looking at early January in Breckenridge and we're like, what is happening? We're going to the town for data. We're going to key data. But I'm like, it's not just us. Okay, we didn't screw up. This seems to be a market level issue, not a we just missed the boat issue.
Yep.
I think, which is a whole different conversation. But yeah, it was definitely a lot, but it was almost relaxing because you go from, it's not so much high stress. It's just you can very intense workload on 365 units, managing them, pricing them, understanding where we dub them problem child units, where your laggards are. And then ones that are selling too quick, you're like, I need to raise the price on that. I don't know why, really. I don't have time to figure out why, but it's booking too quick. I just need to slow down. Let's do this. you're making, again, macro level moves, very high, very quick decisions, almost off of instinct. You're not really questioning it. You're just running off of instinct, going down to, okay, let me spend 2 hours of my day just studying pricing for the month of July for the one unit I manage currently and the two that I'm about to manage. It was actually nice to have that level of, I don't know if contrast is the right word, but that just dealing with two different things, going from I'm running off of instinct, I'm functioning off of my own knowledge, I'm just moving through the motions, so to speak, in an educated manner, not just willy-nilly.
Yeah,
and then
of
going
course.
down to feeling like I'm going back to school. Be like, okay, let's go learn. Let's use a totally different part of my brain where I have no preconceived notions. I have no assumptions. I'm just learning. Okay, let's go look at Rosemary. I met with Jennifer during that time as well. That was awesome. I think I even had a conversation with you during that time, which was equally as supportive. Kind of poke some other revenue managers that I know and be like, hey, what do you know about these areas? What do you see in them? Going from essentially like the teacher level professional that I try to be in Breckenridge to the student level who's just like, I'm a freshman, let's go. Like,
Yeah.
I know nothing. It was really nice for me, actually, and it still is to this day. It's nice to have those contrasts and then again similarities and being able to apply what I know, and it's reaffirming that what I'm doing and me myself as a professional, as a revenue manager, that I am, for lack of tooting my own horn, I'm as good as I think I am.
Yeah.
It's that, okay, I can do this. It's really confidence inspiring. You also make some mistakes, and those are learning experiences. So it's great to have all of that in one. And I really was at first scared of managing two markets in a remote market when I hadn't been to, but now it's just really nice. When I'm tired of looking at Breckenridge and talking about summer and just like, I'm gonna go look at 30A. Because again, I go from macro high level to micro. I'm going to go hang out over here and educate myself and learn so that when I'm asked questions by yourself, by my bosses, by whoever, I can articulate in an educated manner that I have done this research. I am now the authority in a new market. And that now it's, my boss is going to be like, hey, what do you think about this? And it's like, oh, you actually don't know that. I
Yep.
know that. And then it's, oh crap, I'm the one responsible for this now. It's like, oh yeah, okay, here you go. Here's the research that I've done. Here's this. And then see it play out in real time. And we're in a huge booking window. We just saw a really big booking cycle for 30A during March. One of their big booking pushes is in that March window for the May, June, July. And then you kind of hit the lull post spring break. People have spent their money. They're all recovering from their sunburns or ski accidents or whatever. They all kind of take a break. And now you're seeing it pick back up. And then seeing those differences emerge again between Rosemary, Santa Rosa, and just kind of, feeling a little gun shy on some things, like I'm just going to wait. Or we sent a unit live in the Santa Rosa market. I think I missed that March window, and I think it was a little too high. I was like, all right, I'm done playing games. Let's just get a booking, get a couple bookings. But it's great to see how it play in real time on that micro level and just have those differences, be a part of my day-to-day routine now.
Yeah, absolutely. And I love hearing you hinted at, I don't know that you specifically said it, but being adaptable. Like, I can be a teacher, or I can be a student. And that's super important, I think, for anybody that's listening to this, that's maybe not the revenue manager, maybe they're a little bit higher level than a revenue manager. That's a quality that you absolutely should be looking for in your RM. Somebody that's humble, willing to say, I don't know this, I'm going to go learn, and isn't sitting there just saying like, no, I got this. I know this. 10 years in a market, heck yeah, you got this. You kind of know a lot of it. But to hear that, hey, I'm going into a new one, I'm going to go learn about it and everything. That's really impressive. I had a conversation earlier today with one of my teammates. His name's Pallav. He's a great guy. And he asked me a question that honestly, I didn't know exactly how to answer it. So I'm going to put you on the spot and see what your answer is, because I got put on the spot. But what does the revenue manager truly do? Like, we know it's rates, we know it's merchandising and minimum length of stay. My response was seeing a bigger picture when other people aren't looking, like looking at all those macro and micro trends and things like that. So kind of ask you the same question. What do you think a revenue manager's true role is? If you had to put just one line item that says revenue manager, this is what the position is, what do you think is the most important aspect of the role?
Yeah, I think there's always the job description, then there's the job. With any job, it's not just revenue management. That's true with whether when I was an assistant general manager, whether I was a guest service agent. I mean, you always have your job description and then your job and your day-to-day. I would say the way I approach revenue management in my company, and in your organization, it can completely different, can vary depending on the size of the organization and the complexity of it, or just the simplicity of it, which in my instance in 30A is one of my favorite things. I love how simple it is to function in a 10-unit company, being a part of a bigger picture relative to what I do in 365 units plus.
Yep.
I would say, as like a one-liner, it's our job to be the conduit between data and just everyone else. It's our job to go in there and, me and you can have a different conversation than I can have with my director of guest service, and I can have with a homeowner.
Mm-hmm.
It's our job to be able to take the data, take what we're doing, on top of doing revenue management, and then be able to articulate that to any audience, and then have those kind of conversations with any person and tailor the conversation to those people. We know outside of our industry, I can't use ADR, I can't use, RevPAR, I can't use some terminology. I can't use that with a homeowner. I probably can ADR, some easy ones. But I would say it's our job to be a conduit to the data, both interpreting it and expressing it to anyone who has to ask about it. Because if we're just doing this in our own little silo and we're not talking to people, whether it's other revenue management people in our company, homeowners, what are we, AI can replace us tomorrow.
Yep.
But I would say it's our job to take the data, interpret it, and then just act as its conduit and sort of, for lack of a better term, translator to everyone else, and then turn that into actionable business intelligence and then actually act on it.
And again, I did not prep you for that question at all. If I go back and watch my video from me talking to Pallav, it took me about 15 minutes probably to get to that statement that you just made. But I 100% agree there. The communication is so key from the RM across all channels. And I don't mean channels like channel manager, like OTAs, like housekeeping, talking about reservationists, talking about BD teams, all of that. I 100% agree with you. So kudos on that answer. Moving along a little bit further, talking about key data. We've kind of hit at it a little bit that you all are on Wheelhouse right now. No worries whatsoever over here. Yes, it's PriceLabs podcast, but we're talking revenue management. We're not talking tools right now. So what do you see coming up? Like, we know what's happened in, the United States right now. We see kind of what's happening trend wise with European travelers, what's happening with US travel, what's happening with money. Do you see anything? Well, I'm not even gonna say do you see anything. What's your prediction for 2025? Whether it's in Breckenridge and the overall Summit County market, whether it's in 30A, which for our international listeners, 30A is in the Gulf of Mexico area, not the Gulf of America, the Gulf of Mexico area in Florida. But what's your prediction for 2025 in terms of revenue management, either in your market or broad view, so to speak?
Yeah, I think we'll start at the top and go to the bottom. On a broad level, I think any economic uncertainty is the number one factor in vacation rentals. It plays the biggest role in this. People always want to say, oh, you got snowfall, you must be able to increase rate. It's like, not really. It doesn't really work that way immediately. Now, if there's a drought occurring, yeah, snowfall is huge if the mountains don't open until January and climate change, however you want to word it, changes it. It's a different story. I think globally we'll see a slowdown. It's how are you going to deal with that? And that, as I touched on earlier, I think the homeowners have a lot of emotion in it. It's our job to, hear that emotion and be relatable to it, but also educate them in that, listen, I understand you bought your property in 2021, 2022. I mean, we saw in our portfolio alone, maybe 100 units that were onboarded, but only 50 of them were new. The other 50 just sold and stayed with us.
Yeah.
So I'm speaking to 100 or 50 brand new homeowners who just bought and, have not been with us. So great, I get a fresh slate. But I'm talking to 50 other people who saw the numbers I put up in 2021, 2022, and are now messaging me, why is this happening? Why are you giving away summer so early? I think my home is worth this. And it's like, I'm not saying your home isn't worth that. Mm-hmm. I'm saying that here's my, number, that here's what I think it can make. It's, I think on a broad level, everyone's going to lose money. When the economy goes down, that's just what happens. No one's worried about the vacation rental industry losing money when everyone is losing money, or you have certain sectors of industry just getting demolished, right? To bring it down to how I think that's going to impact Breckenridge, we're already seeing that. We have notes from last year, we've already seen those changes, but I think summer will be much more drive to. So we have to, shorten our length of stay requirements. Maybe I, price 2 nights out, not at a 3-night rate, but at a 2.5-night rate earlier than I did the year before. I think it's making capitulations with ADR and being able to express that to both your team and to homeowners. We're fortunate enough that we release a monthly statement, and our homeowners have like an 80% engagement with that. So 365 awesome. Owners, 80% engagement. Almost 300 of my owners read it. Now, whether they read the whole thing or not, I can't tell you, but they opened it.
Yeah,
they saw it, and we're prepping them for that. And I think that communication is really key. That we are anticipating a down market. We can't tell you, we don't think it's going to be the 20% number that we've seen from some other markets. I think Las Vegas just released their numbers and some of their impacts, and it was like insane, tens of millions of dollars of impact in that market. Now that's Las Vegas. I think Breckenridge and what we'll see in our portfolio will probably see a 5 to 10% dip in occupancy, and the same in ADR. ADR might be a little bit more dramatic. Depending on your portfolio makeup. We are primarily made up of 365 units. I think 200 of those are 2 bedrooms and smaller. The other 165 of that 80 are 3 bedrooms, and then the others are 4 bedrooms and larger.
Yep.
So I still compete against hotels. If you're a luxury property manager in Miami-Dade and you only have 5-bedroom mega mansions, your portfolio will look a lot different than the numbers I just quoted.
Yeah, exactly.
But I think that, a bad economy isn't good business for anyone. It's just going to happen. It's about your ability to make changes and stay on top of it and act sooner rather than later. I think we touched on it earlier. People always say the booking window is shrinking, and I don't disagree with you, but I do disagree with you. I think it's kind of going in both directions. We are losing that middle cycle that we used to saw, that 90 to 120 day booking window where I could still push ADR. I think it's disappearing. And I think revenue managers are acting too late. And then it's a giant race to the bottom in that last 60 days. And your ADR just blowing out. I think we just have to start getting out of our, rhythm, so to speak, and start looking at, okay, we did this in our portfolio. In November, we decided to be more aggressive with March, and that I probably sold it for 10% less than I did the year before, but we saw the writing on the wall.
Yep.
And that paid dividends for us. We're looking at March numbers now. That was one of the best decisions we've made.
Yep.
Because we were able to capture the booking window a little bit further out. We didn't really have to race to that bottom in January, even though January was kind of scary for our market. So I think it's just going to come to, you have to be able to just, roll with the punches. You're going to have to push some stuff. You're going to definitely get some things wrong. I mean, I know we've gotten plenty wrong. Again, 365 units, I'm bound to make some mistakes. We've even gotten some things wrong in Florida. But I would say the best thing you can do to counter it is open your calendar up as far out as humanly possible. We have a 13-month rolling calendar. Generally, you can already book spring. Right now, we're still finalizing spring break, so it's not, don't hold me to that. Yeah. But it's our philosophy to have a 13-month rolling calendar. So you can book, right now you should be able to book through April or May of next year. Open your rates up and don't hold out on some of those areas that are generally hard to fill. That's where you have the most wiggle room.
Yep.
Just start making the changes now and just start testing the waters and take that data and keep going with it. And hold out over the spring breaks and the MLKs and the presidents and the New Year's. I wouldn't do that, but make sure the rates are available, make sure they're competitive. And for the love of God, don't expect to get the money you got in 2022, 2023, because it's not going to happen. I don't care what property you are, unless you're in Aspen. Aspen is the only place that I've seen ADR go up.
Yeah.
Or those luxury, or Jackson Hole. But just, get your calendar open, be competitive where you can be competitive, start getting that data, and really just start playing with it sooner rather than later. That's what we're going to be doing. That's what I am doing. I'm working on spring break pricing for next year for 30 EA for our market down there. Awesome. I'm making some adjustments. I'll hold out a little bit. I'll offer some length of stay discounts, but the more data you have, the better it'll go for you, especially given the size of our portfolio, at least.
Yeah, definitely. I think I 100% agree with you on everything that you said. And one of the things that came to mind when you were talking about those, like seeing those opportunities ahead of time. Like if you are in Breckenridge and you struggled last year getting weekdays booked up, so to speak, you knew like later down the line you had to get them down. Why not just go ahead and prep yourself for 25 and 26 and have those weekdays a little bit lower than what you expected last year? I think the foresight on that is really, really important. And you've talked about something that nobody else that I've interviewed on this podcast has really talked about, and that is prepping your rates for ahead of time. Again, this is RevLabs by PriceLabs. We price for you 540 days out. But what I find talking to customers and revenue managers alike, very few people actually go and pay attention to the rates that are out there for that time period. There's a lot of reliance on, PriceLabs, on Wheelhouse, on Beyond, on any of these tools. It's really nice to hear you say that you don't have your eyes trained on these upcoming bookings. You have your eyes trained on the big money days for you. And I think that's something that anybody listening to this, if you find yourself only focusing on the last 10 or the next 10, the next 15, the next 30 days, focusing on just the month of April and May, you're not helping yourself fully with revenue management. I think, John, what you're saying is a great step that a lot of people, if you're not currently doing it, should be looking at. If you're down in Miami, you don't really have seasons quite the same. It's going to be busy every weekend or whatever, but the people that are in 38, the people that are in the Smokies, the people that are down in Galveston, Texas, those folks should be paying attention, even if it's not in the booking window. Get those primetime dates ready to go, because going to what you said, I've seen the exact same thing. Yes, technically the average booking window for an entire, stay or whatever, it's kind of compressed, but there's a lot of people that are wanting to book out early. And the people that are truly winning, from what I can see, are the ones that are being realistic with those expectations and making sure that their rates 5 to 6 months from now are really, really in line with where they need to be. So kudos to you. And I keep saying kudos, and I'm going to say this one more time, Gavin. I hope you give my guy a raise for how awesome he's doing, but we'll get to that later.
Yeah, no. And thank you, Kyle. I think it's, just to add on to it, one thing that Gavin always says is, listen, your grandma's shopping habits haven't changed. Your parents' shopping habits haven't changed. So why would you change the way you function on that? Now, sure, maybe your grandparents aren't booking to stay anymore. Now your parents are, but they learned from your grandparents. They're still booking months in advance. Those people are still there. There just happens to be more younger people who, the childless millennials, or even with a child, who just travel last minute and are okay with that. And they're okay because they remember the horror that 6 hours early to the airport, or parents freaking out about 6 months in advance, booking their stay. We're not going to get the condo we want. Like, you remember that. So, just like you don't want to inherit your grandma's china because you're terrified of breaking it. Same thing can be applied here. But I would say it's really important to focus on those later booking windows and not just focus on the times you're going to crush it. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I want to make as much money as I can for Christmas, New Year's, spring break, and all of those. But those shoulders are just as important. And as to your point, you said, if you knowingly were hurt there, and in our market, Tuesday is almost an impossible sell outside of winter break and spring break. Tuesdays are just dead.
Yep.
So great, be more aggressive and get the Sunday, get the Monday, get the Tuesday, and make the guests see the value and chase that longer length of stay. And yeah, did you give up ADR? Yes. But did I book 5, 6, 7, 8 nights instead of just a 3 or 4 nighter? Yeah, I did. So you have to be finding that revenue in new places and not so much chasing ADR and RevPAR, because if you just are hyper focused on that, you're doing yourself a disservice. You have to be playing the long game. And I think those people booking in that 5, 6 month out lead, and even those booking a year out. I mean, I just booked and had a request for spring break of next year. I'm already seeing those things come in. I run my reports and I just segment bookings for next December through March. And I'm like, oh, hey, look, where did this come in from? Someone just booked 10 nights in the week before spring break, which inherently is one of the hardest weeks for us to sell because it's post-Presidents, it's pre-spring break. And we were just like, let's give it away a little bit earlier. I'm not giving it away for free. Did I take a $50 ADR hit? Sure, I did. But I booked 10 nights instead of 5 because I took an ADR hit. So to me, that tells me I'm doing the right thing. I'm going to get a couple more bookings, get some more data, and see what happens. But you have to be willing to start playing around and getting out of your comfort zone to just find that. But I think you're doing yourself a disservice if you're not focusing on the times you struggle the same amount you focus on the times you succeed, because that 5%, that 10% difference, or even less than that, that's what's going to make or break your whole year. That's what's going to make or break your homeowners too. Well, I undersold New Year's because of X, Y, and Z, but I made it up in these shoulders where inherently I struggled because I played the long game. I think you hit the nail on the head. It's great to always look at the future, but I would stress that you need to give as much attention to those shoulder seasons as you do the core booking opportunities that you have in your portfolio. Now, that's going to change depending on where you're at. But here in Breckenridge, for us, I think it's when we talk about making all of our revenue December to March, the first week of December till December 18th, there's no real ADR there. It's just hoping you're getting a booking. So why not give that away? And we all know OTAs love conversion. So yeah, did I lose $100? But did that pay off on my New Year's booking? There's no way to really know. But I'm gonna play that game on a bigger scale, on the macro scale. And then again, post winter break, MLK aside, to even spring break, there's not a lot of game to play in there. Yeah, MLK is a bit, President's really good. But other than that, like, play with those date ranges for if you're in my market. And then same thing with after spring break, the last week of March into April. That's where you can play around with. That's where you have the least to lose. So go ahead and do it. Now, your market and how you function is going to be different. But if you're in a ski market, that's what I'd recommend. But I'm certain 30A has the same market. Play with those rates, test the water, see what happens, show those rates sooner than later. I'm hearing from 30A that snowbirds are booking, not just a year in advance, like 16 months in advance now. So release the snowbird rates, put a 30-night minimum. Who cares? Just release it, and it's out there in the world. At least someone can find you. Showing up, even at the wrong price, is better than never showing up at all. And then you'll eventually get that data, you'll make adjustments, and you'll learn from it. But not showing up is the worst thing you can do for your portfolio.
100% agree on that one. I'm a big fan of making sure you're visible. Obviously, we want to control our calendars to an extent with a minimum length of stay. We don't want a bunch of blank days in there and orphan gaps and all that. But the more visible you are, if you have a choice between 4-night minimum length of stay and a 3-night, 3 nights going to benefit you, in my opinion, on that, just from the visibility standpoint. So, real quick, we're gonna put a bow on this, but I did want to ask one thing, just because a big portion of what I've been doing with RevLabs is talking about restrictions and governmental involvement and things like that. And a little bit more of a background. I think I mentioned it earlier. I used to price in Breckenridge as well. Right when I got done as a revenue manager, before I joined PriceLabs, Summit County started putting in a little bit of restrictions around the Blue Ridge area, or the Blue River area. What's your experience been with, these types of restrictions that are coming in? Have you found anything, that's a hindrance to you? Do you think what's been happening in Summit County overall's been helpful? Do you think it's been hurtful? A little bit of column A, a little bit of column B. Kind of how do you feel about what you've experienced with regulations in our market or in our industry?
Yeah, I think, regulation is good until it isn't, right? There's no defining that moment. There are definitely some things that need to change in Breckenridge when it comes to regulations in Summit County. I think that the biggest obstacle is just educating the people in power that we face. A lot of people are elected, and this is not just Breckenridge specific. This is what I see in Summit County. I've seen this in 30A, and I've seen this other revenues managers I've talked to in Park City and Aspen and other areas that I know are experiencing this, that making sure that people in power are educated are great, because giving them the numbers, giving them the data to support their claims or refute their claims is what they need to see. Whether they choose to listen to it or not is a totally different story, but at least you tried. I would say the worst thing you can do is just staying quiet and just letting them do whatever they want and functioning off of whatever data set they're looking at. You need to go to these town halls, you need to talk to them, you need to work with them and tell them, listen, I'm here to help you, but you're eventually going to, regulate my industry out of existence. And I think we see that happening in certain areas. I forget who it was, but there was a great speaker at DARM who was from the Hawaii market who did something similar to what I'm echoing. But in Breckenridge specifically, and in Summit County, haven't come across too much of the regulation that affects the majority of our portfolio. We've had a lot of units where, for whatever reason, a new law was written where now they are, restricted on the amount of bedrooms and what is defining a bedroom, or that because it was built in the 70s and it was declared one way, it's not declared that in the modern time. It's these little things, but it doesn't affect a lot of our portfolios. I think the biggest impact that I've seen in my decade in Summit County is relating the amount of the unit capacity and how many people can sleep to the size of a unit. I think that that's a great place to start, but that it's not a copy and paste situation. Yep. We have homes that, are 5 bedrooms plus den plus loft plus another den, but because it's a 5-bedroom, I can't use that sleeping space. Now I can gray area it and put it in my listing as sleeping capacity, but I can't advertise that it can actually sleep 20. Instead, I think in Frisco, it can only sleep 14.
Yeah.
Now there's sleeping capacity. And I get it. They're trying to get away from parties. They're trying to get away from these big things. And I think in the instance I just shared, it's not that hurtful, but I have had some properties where revenue has been slashed in half because it used to be a 3-bedroom sleeping 12, and now it's a 3-bedroom sleeping 6. For Blue River is the example where that happened. That, at a certain point, it's not good for anyone involved. The homeowner's home value went down. The property, the taxes, taxes generated from the revenue of that home went down. I think there's some things that's being too restrictive. I get not wanting to sleep 20 people in a house. Now, Florida is the Wild West. I can sleep however many I want. That's really a trade-off. And then homeowners, though, express concern about wear and tear and parties. It is Florida after all.
Yeah.
But I would say that there's a sweet spot that needs to be found that I don't think quite exists. In the Summit County, you have Breckenridge, Frisco, the Summit County itself, Blue River, Silverthorne, Dillon, Keystone now being its own city. Yeah. It would be great if we could find sort of a standard to come by, especially in a place like Summit County where there's so many cities, and they could all kind of agree to something and come up with stuff and just learn from their own cities. Frisco came out with a newer one where they're really concerned about parking. So for every bedroom must have a parking spot. And if it's a 3-bedroom by law, but it only has 2 parking spots, I can only advertise it as a 2-bedroom.
Interesting.
I don't know why I can't just say it's a 3-bedroom with 2 parking spots. So that's a new one that came up that, is very confusing to me in that regard. And then now they're talking about, we have 1-bedroom plus lofts, right? And they're like, well, our counter is, why is a 1-bedroom plus a loft, which just doesn't have a wall, but it is a bedroom?
Yeah.
Why can that, I get sleeping occupancy, maybe it doesn't, but why can that, be a 1-bedroom plus loft with a parking spot, with 1 parking spot, but a 2-bedroom can't be a 2-bedroom sleeping almost the same amount of people with 1 parking spot?
Yeah.
So that's a bit of a weird one that we're dealing with now. And there's been a lot of,
that's up there with the strangest. I think that might be the strangest one I've heard. For the most part, I hear some regulations and like what they're doing in the Smoky Mountains right now, making sure that like gas pipelines are at least 20 feet away from your property. Yeah, it hurts if you've got a gas pipeline that's already built out and stuff, but it makes sense why they're doing it. Like, protect assets, but that one I don't know about. So, and if you're listening to this and you're in Summit County, go talk to the people and try to get that taken away, please.
Yeah, I'm all for regulations for guest safety and for home safety and for anything like that. Again, my experience with this is limited, and I think it's been so case by case. It hasn't been something as sweeping as what you said with the Smoky Mountains, something that's, hey, we're just going to do this now. And I think it was Bill 6 was what was coming through with the taxation where they taxing us similar to hotels. That was the biggest scare that we've seen in our side of the industry, and that was universal. I would say the best thing to do is just get involved in the process. If your destination is looking to do these things and looking to implement it, go to these hearings, go to them, make them informed, provide your opinion in a very polite manner, and find outside help from where you can. I think it's very important to understand where these people are coming from in power. Some of them were elected on this basis, but if they can't make it happen, they're only going to be there for 1 term anyway. So it's going to be the next person, which I think is just the fallacy of politics in general. But do what you can to be a part of it. Educate those people in power. Educate your homeowners as well. Getting your voice heard between yourself, the homeowners, the town itself, and how that impacts businesses is going to be your best, for lack of a term, weapon against regulation. But there are some regulations that are needed. I understand a 5-bedroom shouldn't sleep 20 people. And I understand the concerns about party houses. That was shared with the homeowner as well. That homeowner, even though they could sleep 20 people, only advertised 16. But then now to advertise only 12, they've lost a little bit of revenue. That home, I think, used to do 300K. Now it does like 250.
Yeah.
And that was before the effects of COVID or the post-COVID era set in. But no, I would say just get there, get people the information that need it, and that, try to be there and educate your homeowners. I think that's one of the best things you can do as well. If you are knowing about something that's coming up, whether you do a monthly homeowner newsletter or not, just send something out to your homeowners. Make sure they're aware of it, because the more people that voice, not necessarily, have a critical voice of it, but just want to be informed and want to know more about it and can be a part of it, the better it's going to be for everyone in the end.
I absolutely agree with you. John, thank you so much for joining me today. This was such a pleasure to have this chat with you. It flowed even better than I expected it to. Love chatting with you always. Hope to get to see you soon. And for the audience, we'll be back soon with a new RevLabs. Hopefully we'll hear John back here in a few months as well. So thank you so much for your time, man. It's been a pleasure. Thank you.
Yeah, no, thanks, Kyle, for having me on. It's always great to talk to you, and really a great conversation to be had with anyone. I encourage everyone to listen to the podcast and just to talk to other revenue managers. It's the best thing you can do. We're pretty siloed within our company. I'm fortunate enough to have a few other people on my team. But yeah, it's a great thing to have and a great way to, articulate all the stuff in my head in one great place.
Absolutely. Well, appreciate you, John. And thank you very much for listening to us today, guys. Have a great day.